All right, folks, well, welcome to what will be the last Mac training for, 2023, which is quite exciting. This year has gone quick. We're going to spend 4 days together. Let me just firstly go over just a couple of the housekeeping rules and give you guys an overview of what we're going to do. Today is the bonus day, but we do it first. And what it's really about is just getting and fine-tuning all the particulars in regards to ACH. We can do interview stuff. We can talk about particular things. We can spend a whole day just going through the testing if you guys want. We'll do a round robin very soon, or I'll have you guys yell out to me what you really want to nail. We can do any of that stuff today. Then tomorrow will be the first official day of Mac. There is a worksheet attached to the previous Mac trainings, but I'll make sure I have Fritz, if that's okay with you, I'll have her uploaded into the group. Bring those questions along with you. We're going to spend 2 days reading scripts, sort of just really going through the questions to help you guys just solve some of the biggest teething problems with ACH. Then the 4th day is my favorite. We're going to hit the ground running with your business. We'll talk about everything business related, 7-figure thinking. We'll talk a lot about some concepts around Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and how they've become such a big hit in their niches, because we can transfer the same things they do into our businesses as well. Okay. So with today, guys, we've really got unlimited time. We can make it as long or as short as we need. Like I said, this is a bonus day. Mac used to be 3 days, but this is just to catch everybody up on ACH. So I say this to say, what do you guys want to get out of today? I'm going to make some notes and we'll go through one by one by one. It's processing, it's testing, it's Scott. How do I help my client who over talks? What do I do this? How do I break thought loops? Can we see another demo? We're really freestyling it today. Okay. So if you had a magic wand or a list or something like that, what would you guys want to get out of today? What's something you really want to nail that'll help you with ACH in the future? Just yell them out or even type them in the comment box.
Antagonistic clients.
Antagonistic clients. Okay, I'm going to put this on my list. Bear with me. Okay, so oh God, I'm glad you guys can't see me spell that word. Clients. Okay, Vanita, I did see yours. I need that chat box back.
Thinking and thought.
What was that, Andre? What was that?
MACH. Thinking and thought. What was the difference?
We're going to do that tomorrow. So that's all Mac. So we'll go through that tomorrow. So resistant clients. Yeah, thinking and thoughts is cool.
Holding. One thing I'm struggling with is a lot of my ACH sessions feel like talk therapy. Like I'm just asking questions and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere.
Okay, perfect. That actually folds into what some of the questions here are, which is good. So holding clients in unconscious moments. We'll say stopping talk therapy, and I'll explain that. Just going through these comments, guys. How to not get stuck on the symptom. Yeah, let's talk about that. Spinning around the symptom. Okay.
How do I know when the session is over?
Yes. Is the session over? Now, for some of these, just remember your questions, guys. So I'll probably come back and say, hang on, what did you mean by this? Is the session over? How to know? I'm going to turn these all into social media. Thanks, guys. Clients that think the path to resolution will be lengthy because the issue has been around. Beautiful, Joe. That's excellent. So that really becomes an objection for your clients who think it has to take a long time. Beautiful. Love that one.
So I've got 3. What to do with second, third, fourth sessions.
Yep. So second, third, fourth, what to do. Yep.
And then what to do when all of the answers are, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
How to stop. I don't know. Yep.
And the third is, give me a second.
Go for it. Anything else, folks? What do we got? How to know you've done enough testing. Beautiful. Annette, fantastic. Go for it.
How do you discourage people from even using the 3rd and 4th session when they don't need it? People don't want their money's worth, but they're just sitting there.
Yeah. People wanting.
That's a good one.
Yeah. These are fantastic. Anything else, folks?
Yeah, Scott, Vineet has the same question as me. How do you manage overtalkers, analytical overtalkers?
Yep. So we got that one down. Yep. So stopping. Oh, hang on. I didn't write that down. Stop overtalkers.
Okay, I
Yep.
remember the third one. When you find the knot, the where they're, you know, where they have two different beliefs about something, how to dive into that, how to untie that, how to bring that to their attention and get them to untie it themselves.
Yep. Beautiful.
Like transition sentences, essentially.
At the same time, beautiful. Just a side note, Fritz, can you tag Sarah Zarbanos? I can't pronounce her name, just in the group. She can't find the Zoom link.
Sure. And Scott, did you get clients who cannot open up?
Oh, yeah, I didn't get that one. That's a good one. Perfect. Clients who cannot open up. Anything else, folks? How do I deal with ADHD clients? So with that, I'll answer that now. I haven't had experience with that, and I don't know the medical implications with that. What I suggest you do, she's found it, Fritz, that's fine. What I suggest you do is, for Lucy and anyone else wondering, post that question in the MAC or even the ACH group, because there are some doctors and actual psychotherapists and psychologists. It's not to say you guys can't work with it, but I don't know if there's medicine involved and all that. So just, I'm not a expert on that. Does that help, Lucy? I just don't want to give you the wrong.
Yeah, and actually, as I said that, I guess perhaps it's more of an undiagnosed. And then Paul said those people that just keep talking, you know, like over talkers and overthinkers and blah, 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 like that. So I guess that hyperactive type of client.
Can I answer the ADHD question? Because I have an ADHD son.
Go for it.
Who've been working with an ACH, one of our colleagues here. Mainly ADHD people are very suggestible, if you will, and it's so easy to work with them. There's no issue whatsoever. Unless they're on medication, I have no idea, but my son is not on medication, and he is a dream to work with.
There we go. That makes it nice and easy. It's exactly what I would have said. Thank you, Rasha. That's fantastic. Okay. And yeah, it's always, if I don't know the answer, guys, always post in the group, because I do not want to be giving you guys the wrong information. And I'll make sure you guys are safe as well. Okay. All right. So we've got a bunch. Anything else? We've got all day to do this. I want to make sure I cover everything, but I'll just go through what we got. Antagonistic clients, resistant clients, holding clients in unconscious moments, stopping this talk therapy thing, stopping over talkers, spinning around the symptom. Is the session over and how to know? Dealing with objections for people who think it has to take a long time. What do you do, or where do you start with a second, third, or fourth session? How to stop the I don't know answers. How to know you've done enough testing. People wanting their money's worth, expecting it to take a long time. Two different knots at the same time. Clients who cannot open up. So it's a good list. Anything else? Do you want to just go with these ones now? And as you guys have questions, we can we can keep adding to the list. All right. So we're going to do this.
There's another one, breaking the loop.
Breaking the loop. Yes.
I have another one to add too, which is people who pile on problems once the first one is solved, expecting that to be part of the product.
Yep. On problems. Now, what's good is a lot of this stuff is going to be logic, which makes it nice and easy, but we'll go through the therapeutic. Okay. So again, if I mute anyone at one point, it's not because I don't want to hear you. It's just if I get some feedback, I will mute you. You can always unmute yourself. Okay. So let's look at antagonistic clients. What do we mean by this? Let's get a definition. What would an antagonistic client be? What would they sound like? Who would they be? Why do you think they're acting this way? Quote unquote, acting this way. Maya?
Well, I asked it because I had the worst one I've had yet last week. And at some point she actually said, I don't even know what the fuck I'm doing here, in a mean way. Like, I would like my money back, you know. And she was very hyper, ultra rational to the point where the questions seem argumentative to her when they're meant to help her. So that was the context for me.
Perfect. So did you do a strategy call first? What was she like on the call?
I did a great strategy call. She was a spiritual person. She was on the self-help path. She had done therapy with various people. She had heard a message about talking to me. You know, she had seen my posts on Facebook. She knew who I was. I did not feel in any way any alarm bells.
Perfect. So that cancels that out. And the reason I say this, a lot of these problems can be filtered out during the strategy call. That's why that thing is so fucking important. Okay. So when you went through the what's the problem and all that, is that when it started, or did it start a couple of questions through? Give me a bit more context.
It seemed to me like the process annoyed her, meaning that she wanted something more familiar, like close your eyes. And I had already told her that's not what we're going to do. But as it went on, I felt like it was feeding into the part of her that she was there to, you know, face.
Yep.
She just didn't want to do it. So no matter, I did change tacks various times. I tried various modalities. It just felt to me like she felt antagonized.
Yes.
With the process.
Why do you think this would be? And it's really two main reasons. Okay. I always find it ironic. I guess it is a bit more ironic as well. When clients come to you and say, I've been to all these other therapists, nothing's worked. And you go to try something new and they say, no, I want something familiar. So you've got to be very aware of that. And sometimes you can only catch these things through the session, and you've got to sort of call your client's bluff. Why would a client in general get more closed off the more you start to pick at their problem?
Because they know they're going to change, and they really, I felt like she knew I was looking right at her, and she was like, oh shit, this lady's going to get me out of this.
And it was probably the first time she's actually felt something in regards to the problem, rather than just a relaxation, meditation type thing, which it's like, I always think of it like this. A client can go through those things knowing it's not going to work, but at least say to themselves, at least I'm trying something. And then they can always blame something else. Sounds like human beings in general, right? Okay. So what I found as well, when you get them with a couple of questions and becomes like irritates them and gets painful inside, just that one or two steps towards the problem or getting close to the problem is enough for people to go, whoa, hang on. I didn't know we were going to get to this place so quickly. I don't know if I'm ready to let go of this. You know, this is my whole identity, Maya, or holy shit, Maya's asked me one question I've been pondering on for the last 20 years. How did she know to ask that? So it's almost like, it's like the fight or flight. It's like a reflex of the client. Does that make sense? So you've got to appreciate what you did, which was the perfect job. It's meant to irritate people. Now, how you get around it, there's a couple of things we can do. And I know this from experience because the lawyers did this to me as well. If a client starts to get rude, pissed off, irritated, and starts to blame you, look at them and go, see you later. Call their bluff. Erickson was big on that. If people pissed off Erickson, what did he do? He would go out of his way to piss them off. Because remember when I talked about go to where your client is? Okay, now what would another therapist, when I say other outside of ACH, what would they do? They'd calm the situation. Let's have a cup of tea. Let's have a high five. Let's have a cuddle under a blanket and make them feel relaxed. No, you've got to almost call your client's bluff. So you can almost demarcate the session. And I say that with all respect as well. You can demarcate the session and say, look, what's going on? This is what we're going to be doing today. What's the problem? Blah, blah, blah. No. What's really going on? Because unless you tell me the truth, we can't go any further. Rather than the whole therapeutic spiel, stop them and talk to them like a human being. We'll talk about this in the MAC training tomorrow. Stop the session, look at them, and find out where they are. Because that irritation is an unconscious moment. So it can be used later on. And it's awkward, guys. It's fucking awkward, but it has to be done. Because otherwise, it would be like me taking my car to a mechanic and saying, hang on, I watched a YouTube video. I want you to fix my car this way. He says, no, I'm the expert. I know what to do. No, I want you to do it my way. And then when it doesn't get fixed, I still blame him. It's the person. Does that sort of make sense? Okay. But you always know, that's why ACH is so powerful, because it gets to the pain point straight away. What's the problem? How is that a problem? Explain it to me. What has every other therapist done? Okay, Fritz, sit there, close your eyes, relax, create a white bubble of light around you, find your happy place, tap your forehead, jokes aside, of course, but that's what they're expecting. But if that hasn't worked, why the fuck would you go down the same path if that hasn't worked in the past? Something has to be done. And sometimes, and we talk about this with ACH, remember how I talked about an easy way to get past analytical clients is to catch them unaware, to do the thing they're not expecting. That's what happens here. And it catches people. And unfortunately, it's enough for people to go, whoa, where the hell did that come from? Why are you asking me that question? But that's the question you need to ask. Can you see ACH sort of spinning around that? But that's what it's supposed to do. Does that make sense, Maya? Does that help a little bit?
It does, but as an empath, I don't like sitting there in awkwardness. It's a small office and I feel the energy grow really quickly. So can you give me advice on how to care for myself in that situation?
Yep. Realize it's not you, it's them. It's got nothing to do with you. She's paid you for the job you're supposed to do. You're not catering towards her and her likes and dislikes. You're catering towards a therapeutic result. Let me give you another story example. So we all know Erickson was in a wheelchair, okay? Erickson was really, really fond of a lot of pressure on people. And I think I've told this story before. So we had a client come in who said, she said, I can't stand up for myself. I don't like confrontation. However, I need to grow some sort of resilience, whatever word to use, because my husband's cheating on me. I need to stand up for him, blah, blah, blah. So instead of Erickson saying, no, you're a powerful person, you're this or that, he was sitting on his wheelchair and he wheeled himself closer and closer and closer. The client pushed her chair back and back and back, closer and closer, till his wheel, as he said, was sitting on her foot. He put the brakes on his wheelchair so she couldn't move, and he just stared at her. What's the point of that?
She had to create a boundary eventually.
She what, sorry?
She had to create a boundary eventually.
So what is he indirectly asking her to do? Stand up for yourself. Tell me I'm being inappropriate. And that's what she did. She said, Dr. Erickson, I don't like this. Please move away from me. He wheeled himself back and said, you're done. Congratulations. But that was the problem she wanted to solve. So it didn't need therapy. It just needed some logic. Now, I'm not saying do this. There are other ways we can get around that. But do you see my point here, guys, with those types of clients? It's not you. It's always them. If, however, you swap from ACH because you got a little bit frightened and went back to the relaxation thing, it still wouldn't have worked and she would have blamed you for that. So either way, you were sort of screwed from the start. But again, if they get past the strategy call, there's only so much we can do. But the easiest thing to do, demarcate the session and say, we're done.
Does she get a refund at that point?
That's your choice. Yeah, it's such a gray area. What would I do? I don't know what I would do in the session. If I felt this person was just being a fucking asshole and we're going to continue to be an asshole, get out of my life. Here's your money back. Don't talk to me. Okay. If I know there's something behind that and they're screaming for help, but they're doing it indirectly, I'm keeping their money to see, can I bluff them?
That's what I thought.
Does that make sense? And we're not doing this as being an asshole ourselves. You sometimes just have to play these games sometimes. Because remember, if a client's in need of help, they put this wall up of resistance. Why? Because they're not willing to let go of it. They're not willing for you to pick it apart. It's a big leap of faith for someone to go from I'm Paul who's full of anxiety to now I'm Paul and I can achieve anything in my life. Sometimes that's really big for people. And what's the easiest thing to do? Be an asshole to protect yourself, to push people away, especially the ones that can actually help us. Doesn't that sound like a relationship or something like that? Make sense? Does that help, Maya? Does that help for
beginning.
everybody else as well? Has anyone had sort of any antagonistic or rude clients before? Can you see that working for yourselves as well?
I had a polite antagonistic one just this week. I did a session and a half with this guy, and then I stopped it because I found out that he'd already taken on a psychologist a week before,
Right.
and that he'd neglected to tell me that he wasn't in an environment that was quiet and calm and peaceful.
Sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so did you get any of that?
Yeah. So they took on a psychologist, yeah?
Yeah, they took on a psychologist a week before seeing me, before the strategy call, and then they lived in an environment that wasn't conducive to being able to sit and talk quietly. They lived by a very busy road, and get this, his noise-cancelling headphones had miraculously stopped working. So I very politely told him that we weren't going to work together anymore, and that was it.
Yeah. This brings up an interesting thought experiment. Why would someone who deep down is really not ready to change and makes up all these excuses like this is happening, this happening, I can't do it today, cancel sessions, they take on therapists and psychotherapists, psychologists all at the same time. Why would someone do this knowing it's not going to go anywhere? Why would somebody do this?
I think they're kind of afraid / in self-denial.
That's a big thing. Self-denial is huge. I think sometimes people are more happy to congratulate them that at least they tried rather than not trying at all. So when they face their peers and friends and family, they can say, at least I tried, it was Paul's fault. It's sort of like when people join my 100K and they message me a month later and say it hasn't worked. And the first thing I do is I go look at how many times they've logged into the program. And sometimes it's like once or not at all. They haven't even created a password. But it's enough like I tried to do something about it. It didn't work. Now I've got something to blame other than taking responsibility for myself. Does that make sense?
But isn't it's a part of a self-sabotage?
Of course it is. You can call it self-sabotage, anything like that. It's all the same thing. And it's our job, especially with ACH, if someone does want to go that extra step to find out why that exists or what it really is. And people say, well, it's fear of failure. It's fear of money. That's all guesses. That's what makes ACH so interesting. We don't know what that thing is until we find out what it is.
Could it be your comfort zone? They're in a comfort zone.
Yeah.
And they're comfortable with their shit, actually, because they're used to it. They know it.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to get out of it because now to the unknown, especially if you've been stuck for years and years.
Yeah. It could be anything, you know, it could be part of their identity. People talk about, like secondary syndrome, I forget the other words, apologize for that, where people say, well, I'm a smoker, that's my identity. When I'm around my friends, they know me as a smoker. If I give up smoking, what am I going to talk about with them? Becomes that. And I don't even believe in that. These are all just conclusions based on something that's extremely unconscious. Does that make sense? And that's why I've always talked about motivation, and we'll talk about this in MAC tomorrow. That's why, again, our prices have to be so high, because the level of motivation to, yes, I want to change and I know it's going to be fucking painful, but I need to do this, rather than, you know, I'm just going to pay $20. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least I tried, then I can blame Maya. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I also think that a lot of people come to hypnotherapy because they think it's going to be like a magic pill where they just passively are taking whatever in and their whole life is going to change and they're not actually going to have to do any hard work.
Yeah. Believe it or not, that's really the foundation of solving that problem with ACH. It's to make it as close to that magic pill as possible. Because when people say, I want it to be a magic pill, I want you to just wave a wand at my head. Jokes aside, there's some truth to that. And if you can use ACH in such a speedy way, you've actually solved that problem in a fast way. Again, this is differentiation. We'll talk about this on the 4th day. But that magic pill thing is important. But I also agree, you have to make your clients aware on the strategy call, not when they're in front of you, that, hey, I might ask you some tough questions. This is going to be painful. We're going to have to go through a lot. Are you okay with that? I say that on strategy calls when people join the 100K. They say, am I going to have to do a lot of work? Hell yes, you are. Probably more than you ever thought. And on top of that, you're going to have to give up maybe some sleep, give up Foxtel. I tell this to people all the time. because I want them to be prepared for when they dive in and think, fuck, this is a lot of work. Does that make sense?
What's the balance though, Scott, between on the discovery call, I do sell it like this is going to be the simplest form of therapy you've ever done. And it's so fast and look at the results that I get.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have your people who take longer and then they feel that they were misled or something. What's the balance there on how you sell that?
Yeah, well, I always find it quite ironic when you look at other types of therapies and they say it's fast, it's rapid, it's all this, but you need to spend 30 days listening to an audio and homework and see me for 6 months. There's nothing rapid about it. So ACH is fast. So what you have to do, and again, this comes down to the contract and what you say, and it takes a lot of iterations to get to this point, is most people, encapsulate it as most people, we're done, hour or two, 1 or 2 sessions, no worries. But depending on you, your circumstance, what your real problem is, and I don't know what that'll be until we really get into the therapy, it might take us a little bit longer. But, and you encapsulate it again with, the biggest thing for me is I'm going to get the result as quickly as I humanly can. I'll be with you every step of the way. So you don't want to make it concrete like, Matt, every session I work with, Matt, I'm going to get it done in half an hour, because I'm setting myself up for failure. So use the word like most in general, just keep it vague and let people know if it takes longer. Would you care? No, of course not, because all you want is the result, right? So whether it takes 1 session or 2, or we spend an hour here, an hour there, let's get this done as quickly as possible. So I think making clients aware of that is important. Does that make sense? And that's what I talk about. You can always go back to, I call it like this versus that. This is what I do, and you give it a comparison, because now they've got something in their head they can link it to. Most other therapists, don't say names or anything, but it's true. Most other types of therapy take this long because of this. They spin around the symptom. They read scripts, blah, 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 blah. What we do is this is why it is so quick, and we're going to make it as quickly as possible, but I don't know how deep your problem is. Okay, so using a this versus that is important, and just letting people know. And also, like, if I'm talking to Ivan on a strategy call, he's my therapist, and he says like a this versus that, what does that make me think about Ivan? Like, man, this guy knows his stuff. Like, wow. Everyone else told me I was just going to sit there, close my eyes, relax for an hour, and then have to come back and see it 6 times. But Ivan's gone into all these details, he's done this, he's talked about this. He's confident, he knows what he's doing. Look at the testimonials with all the speed. This makes me intrigued as to what's this dude doing that's different. Make sense? Fritz, you have a question? Was that a comment that I missed?
Just a follow-up question. Like, I have a client telling me that she did not want to be challenged. Do you use the same method?
Oh, yeah. Yep. Call their bluff. Okay. Call their bluff. So, well, that's the quickest road to Rome. I'm not going to challenge you as a person, but I do need to challenge your problem. Are you okay with that? No. Well, don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. No, don't say that. But you've got to let your clients know that this is what it could be during ACH. Okay. Erickson, again, back to him, he would never do that. And he'd just keep their money. And I think Erickson was like $3,500 back in the 70s, which works out to be about 10 or 15 grand now. Like it or lump it. Makes sense?
So, Scott, how do you feel about, there's a lot of talk about being trauma informed, somatic experiencing, and I actually have some training in this and facilitating in a way where we're being gentle around the person's trauma, where we're not guiding, and ACH does that, where it's not guiding, it's working with the person. But when there's those times that are challenging, where we're challenging the client, and I don't know, my words aren't there, but I've been wanting to ask this for a long time, because sometimes I listen to some of your recordings and I think that kind of maybe doesn't go with being, like trauma informed techniques.
Well, what does trauma informed mean? Think about it like this. As you ponder that, think of it like this. Isn't trauma a response to something that's unconscious? They're not. It's just a reaction to it. It's a symptom. Now, I'm not saying be disingenuous and treat people like shit who've got trauma. I don't think you have to be gentle, but I think you've got to be respectful. And what's more respectful than Tanya sitting there looking at me and saying, what's the problem with you? How can I help you today? Rather than sit there, close your eyes, I'm going to read a piece of paper too. So remember, the majority of what we do is unconscious, and it's read unconsciously by our client. What is it, like 4 or 6% is verbal, the rest is unconscious. So I think you can be respectful. You do have to know your boundaries, and you do have to know and be aware of the abreaction. And this is just my opinion. I don't think you've got to be gentle. I think respect goes a long way. And treating people with respect, but also not allowing them to be so gentle that they just spin around that trauma. But all in all, I always remember that trauma, or whatever it is, whatever they've labeled it as, unfortunately, they've gone through it, which is horrible. I hate when people go through that, but it is just a symptom. It's still the same thing. And again, I'll add to this before we move on. This is what happens when people get, I'm not saying you, but people get overtrained in all of these different things. They're all different messages. They're all different trainings. They're all different thoughts and theories and conclusions. You've got to find one and stick to it. Find one therapy that works for you, stick with that, because you can get over-informed and overtrained. Do you know the amount of overtrained therapists right now that are still working a full-time job? It's a shame. So I'm not saying don't get trained to become more qualified, but just you've got to see the difference between what is real in the therapy world compared to what is made to sell a course. Does that make sense? It's not a criticism. That's why when people say, well, Scott, why don't you go learn NLP and coaching? Why? That would just complicate fucking everything, because my mind's complicated enough, as ACH is complicated enough. Why would I do something that overcomplicates something that can be so simple? Has anyone found ACH when it works, it just seems so flawless and simple?
Oh, yeah.
Who's found at the other end, you go, I didn't even do anything. Is this supposed to be this easy? Why the hell did it work and you can't explain it? Why would you overcomplicate that? That's the way it's supposed to be. In the contrast, and I've had this chat with Ivan a few times, you do too much and what happens? It fucks the whole thing up. Then you get depressed. You message me and I say, stop thinking. You go, okay, that's what I'm going to do. You go into your next client, you say 5 words and it's done. Then you come back to me and say, hey, it's too easy. Is this supposed to be like this? Yes. I made a video about this on YouTube the other day. When you talk too much, every time you talk too much or do too much, you interrupt the processing. I use it as like a cake in the oven. Put the cake in the oven. You don't open the oven door every 2 minutes and check on it. Let it rise. Let it do its thing. Every time you talk too much, try and do too much, try and achieve too much, you're now forcing it. Does that sort of make sense, guys?
Can I just ask a follow-up on trauma informed? I just want to know, this is a very subtle question, but I want to just hear your personal experience and opinion. What's the line between solving the problem and pain that is permanent? And I mean, like the example I have is someone who came in for rage disorder, but as it turned out, her son had been violently murdered.
Wow.
And so we were able to get through the rage, but there was a point at which I felt like, well, some of what you feel is normal to feel and you got to keep it. But I want you to talk about the line for you.
You just answered your own question. I'll give you back what you just said. Okay. I started to feel that some of what you're feeling is normal. That's what we do as empaths. We care for our clients. So what has Maya done indirectly? And I used to do this a lot too. What have we now done? If that was me, I wouldn't stand for it. I'd want this in my life if that happened to me. You've got to shut that voice off. Does that make sense? Does that answer that question, guys? Has anyone found?
Are you saying the line is when she feels resolved about that trauma, that's when she's done?
That's absolutely. You've got to take everything off you. It's got nothing to do with you. It's got
line is your impartiality.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's got everything to do with your client. Let's say this, Maya. Let's say you're doing a stop smoking, and let's say it is smoking. For some miraculous reason, that ended up being the root cause, smoking. And a client says, You've got it in your head, I want you to quit forever, no more cigarettes, love your life. But they turn around and say, you know what? I'm good where I am. I'm happy just to smoke 1 cigarette a day. I call that a complete success. Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
Same thing here. So the context doesn't change. The content doesn't change, just the context. But I get it. You're a mum. You're an empath. You're a human being. You care for your clients, but it has nothing to do with you.
Am I supposed to know something about when the problem is solved? Like, you can't solve that problem of losing a child exactly. So what am I supposed to understand is my role in that situation?
Yeah, take a client to the place where they're, for lack of better words, okay with it.
Yeah.
I agree. If the child has been murdered, which is horrifically unfortunate, and you were to take away, which is impossible, let's just say you could take away the memory of that child, what's to say that's the only thing she had? Although it's a bad thing, that's the last thing she remembers. And the unconscious mind wraps that in a positive emotion, as in that's the last time you saw your child, that's all you remember this day forward. Okay, let's say you could take that away. Your job, which you can't, your job is just to take it to a place where the client says, I can deal with this now.
Yeah.
If that's what they want. Okay, it's like when I had lawyers saying, can you make me forget about ever smoking? I can't do that. It's impossible. It's a memory. If you've been smoking for 40 or 50 years, I can't go through every one of your memories and just delete it. Elon Musk is working on something like that. Stay tuned for that. But it's impossible. So you've got to be aware and have those boundaries in that contractual agreement with your client and say, I can't do that. What we can do is this, that you're okay that you've got choice, whether you want to smoke or not. So I can empower you to make your own decisions. Does that make sense, guys? Okay. Any questions on that? I don't even know where that, so that was antagonistic clients. Does that all make sense? You can't take away with the event. Yep, I agree, 100%. So antagonistic, everyone's okay with that. The easiest thing to do, call their bluff. Stop the session. If they're being rude for the sake of being an asshole, they shouldn't be sitting in front of you in the first place. Don't deal with those people. But if you get some sort of intuition or feeling like, hang on, there's something behind this. I know they're doing this to maybe just hold on to this problem just a little bit more, push just a little bit harder and see where it goes. Okay. And for the trauma-informed thing, I think about having respect, but my own opinion, I don't agree with beating around the bush and going at it lightly. I wouldn't say dive headfirst and do an Erickson thing on them and just destroy them emotionally, but I would be aware that that is the result of something else. And you've hired me, or I've hired Teresa as my therapist to find out what that thing is. Does that make sense, guys? And you've got the ab reaction drill in case it something pops up. Okay. Paul, Lyndon, go for it.
Real simple question, I think. How do you know when it's time for another session? Okay.
Yeah. You could ask that question, but then you're also going to be aware you don't want to prime your client that it's got to be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions. This is where I used to say, and it worked well, still had flaws, but our client would get to the end and go, oh, Aslan, that was fantastic. This is awesome. I feel incredible. And if a client says, what happens next? We give them the processing chat. And I'd say, get in contact with me if you've got any questions. I'll wait for them to come back and say, you know what, Paul, something else has come up. What do we do next? But I don't want them thinking that by priming them until the processing has stopped. Okay. You don't want to let your clients know, okay, it's the end of the first session. I'll see you on the 15th at 4 o'clock. What have you just now done? You've told them it hasn't worked. You've primed them that you're going home a loser. It hasn't worked. Why would you do that? Does that make sense? That's what that processing chat is so important. You have to nail that to let them know this is what you experience. This is the emotions. This is what's going to happen. We don't need to even talk until that's died down. Well, hang on, Helena. How do I know when it's died down? When you start feeling normal again, the emotions have gone, the hunger's gone, the insomnia's gone, get in contact with me then. 9 times out of 10, I never heard from the lawyers unless they were referring people to me. Got to be remember, your client is most suggestible when they come out of trance. So if you say, okay, How do you feel? So I feel really good. Okay. Well, we should probably catch up next week. What have you now just told them? Hasn't worked. They could have been convinced like, fuck, this has worked. This is awesome. But I guess Helena's my therapist. She's the expert. She must know. So I'm going to listen to her. Or worst off, you don't do the processing chat. I go home and Crystal says, hang on, I had to see Helena 9 times and you only have to see him once. I don't think it's worked. And you have influence of the outside world. That's why we test and demarcate to stop that as well.
Is it a danger to tell them to check in with you then later?
No,
I always tell everyone to check in.
Yeah, I think it's a nice thing to do. Because I would send the lawyers straight to bed. That sounds weird. Send them to go to sleep afterwards. And I'll say, when you wake up, if you've got any questions, let me know. But the best thing you can do, go home to bed, sleep it off. If you've got any questions, let me know. Okay. And again, it's just my choice. This is why I don't follow up with clients. Okay. It goes both ways. Some people do, some people don't. That's the reason I didn't, because I wouldn't want to get on the phone and go, hey, Maya, it's Scott. Is everything okay? You get that inflection in your voice at the wrong time. And she goes, well, yeah, why are you calling me? What is it not okay? Oh, shit. Thought loop breaks down that session. All of a sudden, you've got a client saying, maybe it didn't work. I thought I was cured. This hasn't worked.
And it's the same in, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's the same in a case where you're not doing hypnosis, where you're just doing counseling.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to be very, very careful what you prime during, before, and after. You can make hints that'll be very quick, and you can make a generalization that generally it only takes X amount of time, but you don't want to say it flat out. It'll take half an hour, that's it. You'll never need to see me again, because now you're setting yourself up for failure. But I also don't want to say, well, if you've been smoking for 40 years, that's going to take longer than someone who's only smoked for 10. But that's what people are taught to say. That's not the case. There's no difference between someone smoking for 1 year and 40 years. Why? Because it's all a symptom anyway. Doesn't matter the length of time. Does that make sense?
Scott, can I ask a follow-up to that?
Go for it.
So I know you're basically just generally checking in with people as a courtesy. We've all experienced those clients that just sort of disappear.
Yeah.
And don't respond to anything. How do you really know what your success rate is? And not from an egotistical perspective,
Yeah.
but certainly from a, wanting to make sure your program or whatever you're doing is bang on.
Yeah.
How are you really getting good feedback as to whether you're hitting the mark with your ACHs and your sessions if you're not actually having them back for that sort of that next conversation follow-up to really see what's going on?
Yeah, great question. The only way I could, the benchmark I set or the things I was looking for was referrals. That's the only thing I could track.
Okay.
Because you could also, Tanya, call someone and say, hey, we did the stop smoking session. How do you feel? And they hate you. And they just say, yeah, it was fine. Go away. You can't track that as a success because underneath there's obviously something there. Or can you? Either way. So that was the only way. So when people used to say a lot, what's your success record? I don't know. I could only track referrals. All I can make a logical inference is if a client sends me multiple referrals, it must have worked. Mm-hmm. That's the only conclusion I can draw. But again, if you want to catch up with your clients, that's fine. I think it's still a nice thing, but just be very, very aware what you say to them because you could prime them in the wrong direction.
Yeah, look, I always do a minimum of 2 just because sometimes you do have those clients who feel like a failure if it hasn't worked the first time, and you want to make sure you catch that because they may even be too embarrassed to say, hey, it didn't happen on the first one for me, but then you can sort of almost come in as like the hero and sort it out on the second one because you know that you've pulled the layers away.
Yes.
And now they're really ready after that first session.
Yeah. And I don't think, again, there's no concrete strategy for it. That's all I did and it worked well, but there are probably a lot of people out there that didn't get a result. I'm not superhuman. Even Erickson failed a lot of the times. But it was, I could only track from my economics and my business. From economics and business was just referrals.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
And lack of refunds. That's it. Okay. Does that help where we are, guys? This is what today is going to be about, going through these questions. So let's look at resistant clients. My fucking favorite. What is a resistant client? Let's get some definition. There's many forms of resistance. Actually, two common ones we'll talk about. Well, what are the common forms of resistance? How do we know? What do we look for? What do we hear? Who is this person?
Not following instructions.
Yeah. Who's found that? Isn't it nice when you don't have to tell clients to close their eyes anymore? I remember the couple of times I did it because I thought, and I was mentored in this, I thought ACH was too simple. After watching my mentor for years doing it, I remember one time saying to a lawyer, close your eyes. Nope. I was screwed. I used that as a gateway into, you know, why not? And that actually became part of the process anyway. But think if you had that very direct way of doing therapy, what if a client says no? And they've got every right to. I'm not closing my eyes, Ivan. You're a stranger. Or I don't want to because if I do, I'm going to fall off my chair. No, you won't. Yes, I will. No, you won't. Starts in a really bad place. So not following instructions is a big one. What else? What else would be resistance?
I don't
Saying
know.
I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know is big resistance. And we'll talk about this. What else?
Why are you asking me that? I'm not sure where this is going.
Yep. Why do you
I don't
keep
understand
asking-
the question.
I don't understand the question. Why do you keep asking me the same thing? Yep. What else?
Over and over.
Yep. Same thing over and over. Yep. So it's pretty.
The rational lady I was talking about, she obsessively asked me, what's the object of that sentence? You know, what are you referring to?
Yep.
You know, it was like constant clarification.
Yep. So it's pretty universal. We know resistance when we have it. Okay. Let's go all the way back to a strategy call and your social media. That's why it's so important. Your strategy call and social media should do all the heavy lifting for you to get rid of that resistance. Let's define resistance as maybe a trust issue. Like, I want this to work, 99% of me, but there's 1% of me, I don't know, Maya, this may not work. That 1% will override everything else. That's why your social media and strategy will have to make such an impact. Okay, but we'll move past that. Into the session, you've got conscious resistance and you've got unconscious resistance. Erickson talked a lot about unconscious resistance. Okay, what is conscious resistance and why does it exist? What's its purpose?
To keep things the same.
Yeah, homeostasis, keep things the same, keep things ordinary. The conscious mind tries to solve things it knows, just as a metaphor, it cannot solve. Why? Because the conscious mind is not very creative, and that's not where the problem is. But the conscious mind is in charge of a lot of the things you do, okay? Thus, we ask ACH questions to bypass the conscious mind where it says, huh, what, confusion, what are you talking about? To get access unconsciously. Okay, it's the same as more of like a traditional trance. A traditional trance, not a therapeutic trance, a traditional trance gets past the consciousness, so it says, okay? When the conscious mind is too busy trying to analyze things and trying to fix things on the spot and trying to understand the questions logically, you will have a problem. But believe it or not, unconscious resistance is an even bigger problem. Anyone like to have a guess as to why that would be or what it would look like? Or how do you know you've got unconscious resistance?
I think it's there too because for the fight, flight or fear response.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it can appear in lots of different ways from my perspective. Lots of don't knows, lots of refusals to kind of demonstrate any UMs. I've had that a few times.
Yeah. Think of it like this. Think of the unconscious mind as protecting the problem because it believes in homeostasis, like this is normal. Let's just stick with this because you haven't given me a reason why I should let go of X, Y, and Z. And just as you get close to it, the unconscious mind says, no, 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 it's over there. Go over there. Go, go, go. Get away from here. And you get unconscious resistance. See, unconscious mind saying, no, 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 because we're not ready yet. And it sort of fights that argument. People say the unconscious mind will just listen to you. Give it a bunch of metaphors. Bullshit. It doesn't listen. It has no need to listen. It does what it's supposed to do. Okay? That's where ACH comes in and we offer it a new way of thinking. So it says, huh, I've been wrong for 20 years. What Maya just said makes more sense. Bang, you have a new thought loop. Okay, but we'll get more of that later. So conscious resistance, you'll hear it as a lot of I don't know, shutting down, a lot of unconsciousness there as well. You get a lot of resistance, you'll get a lot of arguments, okay? Mac, over the next 2 days, will help with that, okay? Why? Because we run into that teething problem of asking the same ACH question over and over and over. That's why Mac exists, to give you guys more range as a therapist to ask better questions. That's what we'll do the next 2 days. So we'll take care of the conscious resistance, okay? When it comes to unconscious resistance, you want to just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you'll notice more of those unconscious moments coming up, and you've just got to be very aware of them, but keep that metaphor in your head, like I'm getting somewhere close. Anytime I get the unconscious mind pushing or resisting, I know I'm getting somewhere really, really close, because it's fighting hard. You keep going, don't get distracted. It's like a cat with like one of those laser pointers. You do it here, it fights for the laser, you go over here, it runs over there straight away. Don't get distracted. Keep pushing, obviously with a lot of respect, but just know you're on the right track.
Hey, Scott.
Go for it.
Can resistance show up as there's an unconscious moment and they're going into it, and then they come back with more like, like a story, and not a regression, but just more like story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the story is completely conscious, that's just the conscious mind thinking it's doing the right thing. It thinks it has the answer, or the answer to the question that you've asked. If it comes with a lot of unconsciousness inside the story, like a lot of drifting off, a lot of metaphors, you can see they slow down, they're sort of inside the story, that's unconscious. So I would say when a client starts chattering a lot, that's purely conscious. It just means you've lost the tail of that unconscious moment. Just got to go back to where you were. Does that make sense? But the biggest thing is, don't get distracted by it. Don't believe in what the conscious mind is telling you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you consider that resistance?
I would say it's more like indirect resistance, because yeah, the conscious mind is just doing what it thinks it's best. Like, I know the answer to this. Here it is, but you know that's not it.
Could be also a defense.
Always defense, yeah, same thing. Resistance, defense, anything. So you've got to differentiate between what is conscious resistance, what is unconscious. The unconscious stuff, unconscious resistance actually lets you know in a matter of fact way that you're pretty much on the right track. You just got to keep pushing slowly, and eventually client looks at you, there's no more words, then all the emotions come out. It's like a rubber band. Eventually it'll snap. Just got to keep pushing it. The worst thing you can do is believe what your clients say consciously, because you'll get distracted and you'll back off and you'll go back to the, all right, let's just relax. You were so close. Keep going. Now, go for it.
Sorry to interrupt. Just if I can mention, sorry to interrupt.
Go for it.
For me, it's been when I've asked a client a question, and would you term unconscious resistance in this way, where they just keep avoiding the question?
Yes.
And for me, it's almost like I have to outsmart their unconscious mind, if that's at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like I have to do, because they don't want to answer the question and they keep avoiding it.
We've seen this a lot with the demos. And I'll put it out and say, hey guys, did you everyone hear just the answer that Tanya gave? That wasn't even the question that I asked her.
Yeah.
That's completely avoiding it. And whether it's conscious or unconscious doesn't really matter. The way you outsmart it is you go, no, you misunderstood me. What I asked was, slow down. What makes that a problem? Not why. What makes that a problem? Then you get the, because it's a different context.
So just define it more when they start to avoid it.
When they avoid it, look at them, smile, ask that question again. A lot of the time it's just repeating the question. Like, let's say I said to you, Ivan, what's stopping you from smoking? Quitting smoke. What's stopping you from smoking? What's stopping you from quitting smoking? You say, well, the reason I smoked is because my mum smoked. You've now just answered a why question, but I didn't ask why. Yeah. I said, what's stopping you, Ivan? Well, it's all about my mum. No. Really listen and pay attention. What's stopping you? Yes. You just got to get them. We'll talk about this in Mac tomorrow. Thinking versus thought.
Yeah.
Thought is instant reaction. It's the excuse I give to everybody. Thought is, I haven't thought about this in this way before. Bang, unconscious moment. That's what we'll do tomorrow.
Yeah, that's got Scott.
Does that help?
Awesome.
Okay.
So I've got to slow down and really make them think about the question.
Yeah, that's what Mac does. Get away from thought, which is instant, like, I'll never be able to run a business because I wear glasses. No thought. That's just a conclusion they come up with. And then that's not the truth, by the way, guys. That's a conclusion they come up with. Okay. Thinking is, wow, I've never been in this place before, but I've pondered that question to myself so many times. But this is a different place because we've broken the thought loop. Think about it like this. When someone gets sucked into a thought loop, imagine like an elevator. They walk into the elevator, it goes down, it goes up, brings them back to the same place. They get out and go, damn it, wrong floor. Go in, push the same button, goes up, goes down, brings them back to the same place over and over because they're pushing the same fucking button each time. What we're doing is going in, grabbing their finger and saying, no, push that button. That's the one you want to push. They push that, it goes up, goes to the side, comes out the other end and goes, huh, where's this place? This is new. So the thought loop is stopping them getting sucked into that instant reaction, because what makes that thought loop so strong is they've rehearsed that thing over and over.
Yeah.
I know this is a bit of a glib statement. I'm sure you guys haven't experienced this. Who's used the same excuse over and over about some part of their life that they wish they could change that hasn't changed yet? I know no one's done that before. Have you noticed every time you think about changing that thing, jokes aside, think about changing the thing, you instantly go to the same thought you've had about that thing day in and day out. Who's had that before? It's a good thought experiment for yourself. This is how you know you're caught in your own thought loop. Okay. Instantly it's, I don't know. I want to start dating, but all men are assholes. Soon as someone mentions dating, you watch one of those dating shows on TV, whatever it is, something close to dating, instantly all men are assholes. But I want a relationship. Okay. Your job as the therapist, guys, is to pose something different to get them outside of that loop where maybe it's not all men, maybe just some are. Now I've got choice because it's not all, now it's some. Does that make sense? And remember, what's our job as a therapist? To create choice. And those thought loops can be very, very, very thick, very, very rehearsed. Our job is to break those things. So if you see, back to your question, if you see a client avoiding it, pull them back. Because that avoidance is them just going into the thought loop. They already know the answer before you've even asked the question because they've rehearsed it.
And that sort of things happen, Scott. I've been sucked in by their story, and then I go along with their story and ask another question instead of just staying on that question and digging into it.
Mm-hmm. And now, because you've experienced it a few times, it's now become your thought loop. That's why it's hard to break.
Yeah.
That's why it's easy to get someone on this call and do a session with them. So a follow-up question is, what's stopping you from breaking that thought loop? Well, this. No, you misunderstood me. What is stopping you?
Yeah.
Thinking again. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions from that, guys? That's been helpful so far. Paul Linden, go for it.
I got a guy that as many times as I'd mucked around with hypnosis, I do good with everybody, but this guy, like, he takes pride in his conscious, you know, that, like, I'm too smart to be hypnotized, but he never says that the cockiness isn't there. It's like, I'm trying. And I'm like, quit trying.
Yeah.
You know, just,
yeah. It's, this is a common thing, and it could come up for any sort of number of reason. They could have it installed in their mind that, you know, certain amount of intelligence can be hypnotized, or other people have told them certain things. If I find a client being cocky, like whether we use that word or not, and I feel like they're resisting me just to see how good I am, I just stop the session. See ya. What do you mean? I paid for this. Doesn't sound like you really want to be here, but I do. What do you mean? Tell me. And I start down that road. Now I've got to work through that excuse first and that cockiness to get to what the real thing is. What I don't want to do, guys, what I want you guys to do not allow that to put you on the back step like, oh shit, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. You're in the wrong position then. Okay. So any of those excuses, cockiness, any of that stuff that comes out, you can use that as a gateway in. If a client is actually generally a nice person. They're being an asshole for the sake of it, man, see you later. I'm keeping your money. See you later. You never know. That might be enough out of spite where they go, fuck, Tanya, oh, I hate that lady. I'm just going to quit out of spite. That's fine with me as long as it works, but I'm keeping your money. Does that make sense?